Okay, so in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to set up your Maya to render wireframe on shaded. So as you know, sometimes we need to render in this form to showcase the topology of our 3D models. Okay, so I'll be showing you step by step how to get this effect, and so that you can render a still image like this. Then you can also render an entire image sequence, which you can bring into After Effects and then combine to make a turntable video. Right, so for this example, I'm just going to start from the beginning again. Alright, I will start with the scene which is not prepared. So this is the file number 22. So this is the original file. Okay. And you notice that the colors on my wireframe is a bit different. So let me change the colors back to the default. So they'll be similar to your settings. So to change the color, you go over to Windows and go under the Settings and Preferences, Color Settings, and I'm going to change it back to the default. So the default color for the wireframe is this blue color. Alright. So let's say you are finished with your 3D modeling, and you can see that for my polygon modeling, right, this is level 1 and I press number 3 to go to level 3. Right. So sometimes you want to render your model with a smooth wireframe, and if you notice carefully, my wireframes are very smooth. So to get this effect on your viewport, okay, you can go over to your renderer. Then click on renderer in the viewport, click on the option box over here, and then scroll down until you reach anti-aliasing and turn on all these smooth wireframe, multi-sampling, anti-aliasing, sample count increase to 16. Right? So right now we want to first prepare our scene. So first we want to hide all my modeling references. So I'll go over to my layers, which I place them in layers. I'm going to hide this reference image. And I'm also going to reassign this model with its default material. So I'm going to select all the polygonal model parts, right mouse click, and then assign existing material. And then I'm just going to assign it with a Lambert material. Lambert 1 is the original. I'm just going to switch over to Lambert 5, which is material that I previously created. Okay, so this Lambert 5, you can see here, has transparency applied to it. So I'm going to change the properties. Now you can assign a brand new Lambert material, that's fine. So I'm just going to change the transparency back to opaque. And then for the color, I'm going to use white, so that it's bright and white like that. Okay, now I want to change the color of the wireframes. So go over to Windows, Settings and Preferences, Color Settings, and we want to go over to the Inactive tab under Objects, and then under the Polygon Surfaces, and we're going to drag the slider here all the way to the black color. And right now you can see the wires are black. And next we want to create a turntable, right, to render this sequence. Alright, we want the camera to be flying around this model. So first we're going to create a camera. And then right now my camera is not visible because I've hidden it. So in the viewport, I'm going to show the camera. So I'm going to select the camera and then just move it further back. And then I'm going to look through this camera. So this camera is called camera 1. Go to Panels, Perspective, camera 1. And then I'm just going to reposition the camera so that it is in a nice, I'm going to start off with a nice 3/4 views, like so. And next, I want to parent the camera so that I can animate it to fly in a nice circular motion. So I'm going to create a simple locator. So this locator will act as the parent for the camera. Now if you look over at your outliner here, we want to parent the camera to the locator. So to do that, very simply just Middle mouse click and drag over the locator so that now the locator is the parent. Now if you were to select the locator and rotate it, you can see that now I can actually animate the rotation. Okay, let me undo that. Okay, so right now for the timeline, I'm going to set a playback frame rate of 30 frames per second. Okay, the frame rate is entirely up to you. For me, I'm using 30. And then for the duration, I'm going to set it at 300. Okay, for the timeline. So now I want to set the rendering settings for the wireframes. So if you go over to the clapperboard with the gearbox here, this will open up your render settings. And I want to render this out in a PNG format. And also I want to render it as a sequence. So under the frame animation extension, we want to change it to name underscore followed by the number, then followed by the extension. And the default right now is only rendering 12 frames over here. So we do not want to render 12 frames. So we want to render it at frame 1 all the way to frame 300. And also we do not want to render the perspective camera. We want to render our camera 1, new camera that we created. And the resolution, we're going to use the 4K resolution, because the higher the resolution, the finer the wires will be. Okay, so if you render at a low resolution, your wires will appear very, very thick. So let's go and look at the figures for 4K resolution. So 4K resolution is 3840 by 2160. So I'm just going to copy this one first, 3840. Okay, so I'm going to switch this to custom. So 3840 by 2160. So copy this, highlight, select, press Ctrl C to copy, and Ctrl V the value here. Okay, so now we'll be rendering it at 4K, but make sure that you are not rendering using the Arno renderer. We want to use the hardware renderer. So we're going to use the Maya hardware renderer. Then if you scroll down to the settings, or if you click on the tab that says My Hardware 2.0, you can change the anti-aliasing to the maximum steps as well. Okay, since we already changed it previously, it's already locked to this setting. Okay, now render options, this is very important. Make sure you change the render mode from shaded and textured to wire on shaded. Okay, and then that's pretty much it. That's all you need to set, and then we can close this. And we are now almost ready to render. Now I'm going to do a test render first. So I'm going to click on the clapperboard, the empty clapperboard button here. This will render a single frame so that we can check to see whether our render is fine. So you can see at 4K resolution, the lines are very fine, and also because this is a PNG image, we also have a transparency mask. So this gives us an opportunity to composite a different colored background using a compositing software like After Effects. Right, so this works. So right now we want to render out this entire sequence. So to render out the sequence, we go over to rendering, the rendering mode in Maya, then go over to render, and then go over to the render sequence, click on the option box. Okay, make sure that the current camera is the correct camera that is being selected. Okay, one more thing that I did not do is I have not set up the animation. So if I were to render all the 300 frames, it's going to be the same frame. So let me just jump out from here and set the animation first, because I've forgotten to do that. So I'm going to go to frame 1 with the locator selected at frame 1. You want to go over and turn on the channel box, or you can press Ctrl A until you see this channel box appearing. With the locator selected, all right, move your timeline, scrub the timeline right until it is at number 1. Move your cursor over the rotation for the y-axis. So click on rotate y, right mouse click on rotate y and choose the key selected option. And you should see a red dot appear next to y, indicating that there's a keyframe here. And also on your timeline, you should see a red line appearing. Next, scrub the timeline all the way to the last frame at 300. You want to enter a value of 360. Or actually you can put 359, so that if you play this repeatedly, okay, if you let it run in the loop, right, there should not be a single frame pause there. So 359 is fine. Then same thing, right mouse click and key selected. Now we can test the animation by clicking on the playback button. And now you can see the camera gradually picks up speed and then it slows down. And this is the kind of speed, we do not want this kind of speed. Now, for some of you, if you notice that your playback is moving very, very fast, remember to click on the running man icon here, right at the bottom here, this one. Click on this character and make sure the playback speed is, instead of playing every frame, because if you do every frame, right, the playback will be very fast like that. Because for a lot of you, the default, this is what it looks like. This is too fast. You want to change the playback to 30 frames times 1 and save. So now when I hit playback, it should be playing at this normal speed. However, I don't like the acceleration and deceleration of the animation. So I want to go over to the graph editor and change the rotation, acceleration of the locator. So to do that, I'm going to split my view into top and bottom. So go to panels, layouts, 2 panes, split top and bottom, stacked like that. So now you can see that I have one pane on top, which is our perspective view, and my pane at the bottom here, which I can change into a graph editor. Alright, so I've changed it to a graph editor, and straight away you can see, because my locator is selected, I can see that the acceleration curve of my rotation is shown. You can see that it gradually picks up speed, then from here to here it rotates at a constant speed, and then gradually it slows down. So we want to change the behavior of this acceleration so that the rotation moves at a constant speed. So I'm going to left mouse click and drag a box over the 2 keys, and I'm going to go over to this setting here, linear tangents. Just click on it once and it should convert it into a straight line. Okay, there are handles here which you can also click and control, but we're not going to do that. So now when I hit playback, the animation should now run nice and smooth. Now another thing that we want to make sure is that we want to make sure that our framing is correct. So I'm going to switch this back to a single layout again, and I want to enable, under view, camera settings, turn on resolution gate. Okay, this will show us what the final rendered image will look like. So now is a good opportunity for me to compose my camera view. I want to make sure that as the camera is rotating, that everything here is filled within the view. So I want to move the camera a bit closer and then pan this up a little bit so it stays within frame. Right now the camera is just a child, so I can still move it around, okay, and there is no animation being added in. So we can control the framing of our shot. And I think this looks good. Okay, I do not want to cut out too many things. So right now I can start to render this animation. Okay, so to render, simply click on. Now before you start render, always save your file. I'm going to save scene as, and I'm going to call this underscore wire on shaded, and then this is the second one I did, so I wire on shaded number 2. Now, where will this rendered images sequence end up in? Now, if you go to render and you go to the render sequence option box, you can actually specify where you want to render the files to. So I think we can leave all these options as it is, but for this alternate file location, I'm going to render it at a new folder. I call it wire on shaded, and I just put specifically at this folder. Well, actually I just click on this folder and then I'll say select. So right now it's going to render into this folder. So once I'm done, I'll just say render sequence, and it should start to render frame by frame. Now if you don't see the frame by frame here, you can verify by going over to your folder over here, and then it should render. But sometimes it will not render to the folder that you want, but instead you can see here there's nothing. You can see that it is rendering into this folder instead, and in fact it is overwriting. No, actually it's creating brand new files here. You can see that there's a previous sequence that I rendered previously, but this is the new sequence that is being rendered. So yeah, so this is the new sequence that's being rendered over here, right? And for some reason, right, it tends to render into the TMP folder. Okay, but that is fine. Okay, but at least we know that it is in our project folder. Okay, so if you don't know where is your project, it's under the file set project location. And for some reason also, I couldn't stop the rendering even if I press escape, unlike when you're rendering in the Arnold renderer. But that is fine because I already rendered a sequence previously, and it renders into the TMP folder. So this is my project folder, and this is where it's supposed to be under images. So instead of over here, it actually renders into the TMP folder instead. Okay, so what I'm going to do right now is that instead of waiting for this to finish, I'm just going to copy out my previous renders from another render, and then I'm going to put it in my wire on shaded folder. So I'm going to change my view in my file explorer, and then I'm just going to cut out my previous renders. So my previous render is from 300 all the way to 1. So you can see now it's only rendering up to 84. So I'll just copy this one first. Okay, I'll copy these files, then I'll paste them here. Alright, so this is from a previous render, but it's pretty much rendered the same way. Okay, so yeah, this is what the file looks like, and I will bring this render sequence into After Effects now. So I have After Effects opened over here. Alright, and then I'm going to say a new project. And this project, because the image is so big, but I think I'm going to render it at full HD. So I'll say composition, new composition, HDTV, yeah, this is close to 30 frames per second, HDTV 108 over 29.97. Now I can do 4K as well, but I do not want to render it as 4K. I will resize my image down until it fits into this full HD. Okay, so because we're running at 30 frames per second, so the duration should be about 10 seconds. Now the background color, I want to change it into a white color, and click OK, then click OK. Alright, so now I've got an empty composition. I'm going to bring in the image sequence that I've done. So right mouse click in the bin project here, click on Import File, go over to the folder containing your rendered images. Okay, not this one, it should be this one. Okay, images, wire unshaded, and then I'm going to select all. Okay, or actually just click on the first one, and then you can enable this PNG sequence and then say import. Alright, so if I drag and drop the PNG sequence, you can see that it is gigantic because this is 4K over full HD. So we can resize this image sequence by going over to the scale and then scale it down until it fits. Okay, so I'm going to scale this down until it fits the resolution. Right about here. Okay, maybe I'll just put this at 50%. Okay, so it should fit nicely. I'm going to use the cursor key, up, down, left, right, to move this until it fits. And then if I scrub the timeline, it should play back everything nicely for me. Okay, so for the backdrop, let's see if I can put in something much more interesting. Okay, let me hide this by pressing escape. Alright, I'm going to create a new background. So I'm going to create a new solid. Under the timeline here, right mouse click, new solid. Okay, maybe I'll just use another white color again. And then this white solid, I'll put it below, so that right now this white solid is over here. And I want to see whether I can, okay, apparently I can't do any filling, trying to generate a gradient here. Let's see. Okay, for gradient, I think I'll have to do that in Photoshop. So I'll run Photoshop. I just want to create a nicer looking backdrop compared to this plain white backdrop. So I'll click on New. Okay, this is fine. 1920 by 1080, create. And I just want to create a transition color, maybe sky blue color, like that. And then I'm going to use a fill. Okay, under the fill tool, there's a gradient tool here. So with this color, it should transition between white and blue. So with the gradient, I'm going to start at the bottom, and then I'm going to drag it all the way to the top to create a much nicer looking backdrop like that. Then I'm going to quick export this, and then I'm going to place it into my folder. Okay, maybe over here. I'm going to call this BG background. Go back to After Effects, then I'm going to bring in that background. Then I'm going to get rid of this white solid. I don't need this anymore. Just drop this right below. Then I should see a nicer backdrop like that. Okay, so I have my wireframe turntable for the scooter. Then I can now render this, assemble it into a movie. So I can go to export, okay, and then add to render queue or Adobe Media Encoder queue. So I'm going to do the first one. So the Adobe Media Encoder is going to pop up, and then I'm going to render this into a movie. Okay, by now the rendering should be done, and yeah, for the second sequence is already done. But let's assemble the previous sequence, previously rendered sequence, into a movie first. And we will wait for that sequence to turn up over here. And here you go. So the composition now is appearing here. So this is the output location. We're going to change the render output somewhere else. I'll put it here into my folder. And maybe I'll just put it into the movies folder here. Then I'm going to call this my Vespa EX150 underscore wire on shaded TT for turntable, and then save. Then once you're ready, we're going to use the H.264 MPEG-4 format, which has already been set for us. Then we're going to click on this start queue, which will assemble all the image sequence. So what it does is that it resizes the image for us, and at the same time assemble the image, assemble the series of images right into a movie. Now I want to quickly check on my previous renders over here, and then see that it is, yeah, so it's pretty much the same render. Okay, so we're almost done. We can go over to the movies folder, and in your Maya project folder. So it's still being rendered. And we're done. So now we can play back the video and see what it looks like. And there you go. And if I turn on the loop, right, it should loop smoothly with the Windows Media Player here. Okay, there's a slight, very slight jerk, but yeah. So you can see the resolution looks good. The wires all looks very clear on the shaded model. Now, if you feel that the shading is still too dark, what you can do is that you can apply some lighting yourself. But problem is, if you apply lightings, right, it might end up casting shadows. So you might want to disable the casting of shadows of your model here. And also, I noticed one thing on this render is that the word Piaggio, right, I should not press number 3 to round it off, so the words actually lost some definition. Okay, those the logos, right, are not meant to be subdivided, right? So you just pick on the models, right, or parts of your model that you want to appear in smooth mode. So that's one area that you might want to take note of. But other than that, yeah, to me this is a very quick and easy way to render wireframe on shaded using the hardware renderer in Maya. Okay, with that I'll end the video.